everyone, my name's Agnes Watkinson from NextGen Professional, and we are doing a segment today here at Navacon with John Abel. I've actually known John, I think it's been about 6 years now. It's been a while.
20, yeah, probably more, probably like 2013, 2014. Well, it'll be 6 years, I guess.
Yeah,
7 years.
Yeah. And John has an incredible story, and I think he's accomplished so much for his age, and I wanted him to share that journey because this segment is really about youth and the different journeys and the different pathways that individuals can take into construction, whether again you're youth, women, or if you're coming in as a second career. But he's got such a great story to tell, and some advice maybe to give to some younger individuals who are considering construction as a career. So John, can you just give a brief introduction to currently what you're doing, Navacon, what you guys do?
Yeah, no problem. Thanks, Agnes. So Navacon is a heavy civil contractor. We primarily focus on replacing underground infrastructure, but we also do everything around that, building roads, new development, things like that. So Navacon started in 2008. I came in 2015, and we were a tiny little company then. Basically, we had to turn all the employees over. Like I'm the only original employee, and we had to start fresh. We had some employees that didn't want to stay with new management coming in. So basically in 6 months we went from having a crew of 7 or 8 people to nothing, to back up to a crew of
Wow.
15. So now we have anywhere from 40 to 50 people working for us, a number of supervisors. We have 4 foremen, and we're running 5 to 7 jobs at any one time.
Wonderful.
For municipalities or private owners, all kinds of different things like that. So yeah, it's been a busy 5 years at Navacon, and we're now looking at, we've had co-op students come in where we've given them 2 co-op terms, and now they're full-time employees with us. So we've seen a lot of growth that way, and looking to really encourage young people to get into the industry.
Wonderful, and I know that was some of the core values that we showed, and we've had these conversations, which is why I think that NextGen and Navacon click so well, is because we had that kind of common goal.
That's right.
I want to start with your journey into construction, and kind of where it started fairly early on, but I don't think it was as traditional as most people, so if you don't mind kind of telling us where it started.
Yeah, so basically I had no idea that I wanted to work in construction. I grew up on a farm. I grew up basically working on the farm, not getting paid. It was just my contribution to the family. I was the youngest of 8 kids. And
8 kids?
Yeah, I have 6 sisters.
Okay.
6, I had 7 moms. So I grew up, learned how to work hard, and have fairly low expectations on, just what to expect from the world, and really more of a guidance on what I can, achieve or sorry, I'm blanking out on what I'm trying to say, but basically, the focus is more on what you can do, and not looking to get something out from other people. So how can you participate? How can you support others? How can you work hard and not expect a lot in return? Right. That's kind of how I was raised. So I didn't have any plan to go into construction. I was trying to get out of school as fast as I possibly could. I didn't like high school. I was bored. I wasn't a great student. So I basically, right when I left high school is when they were getting rid of OACs.
Yeah, okay, yeah.
So I basically took whatever courses I need to in year 12, and my last half of grade 12, I only had half days of school, and I worked the other half. And I worked at a grocery store doing stocking shelves.
Right.
And that was, I wanted to do that because I wanted to do some stuff after school. I did some mission work for my church, and that was a kind of a focus. So I came out of high school, did that, and then I said, okay, now what am I going to do?
Right.
Didn't know what I wanted to do. Couldn't commit to anything. My dad was a mechanical engineer, and he taught math at Conestoga College. So I kind of always thought I wanted to go to school, but I didn't know what for. And I knew I didn't want to do mechanical because I didn't really like the detail and the intricacies of it.
It's very complicated.
Yes, and that's not me. So, which is kind of funny later getting into estimating, because estimating is about the details. But so I went to work at a factory, and we made handles for car seats. And so I worked there for a year and basically understood that I needed to go to school, just because I didn't want to work in a factory my whole life. I really enjoyed the hard work and making money and whatever, but I was like, I got to get to school. So I worked there for a year, and then I decided to go to school for civil engineering. And I decided civil because I liked engineering per se. I didn't like mechanical because it was too small. I liked civil because it was huge projects, big things.
Right, yeah.
You know, moving dirt, kind of that kind of stuff. It was kind of exciting to me. So I got into Conestoga, worked there, or started with school, and then my first summer, which was supposed to be a co-op program, I had family in Australia. So I was trying to organize a co-op term with Sydney Water, which is utility.
And that would have counted?
It would, yeah, it would have.
That's awesome.
Yeah. So
I don't think I would have thought to travel and do my co-op at the same time, but
yeah, so it would have been accredited.
Good tip, people.
Yeah. You had to get a work visa, so it was a lot of work to get the visas going and all this stuff, because it was a student visa, which was good for a year.
Right.
So I went and did all that, and it just didn't work out with Sydney.
Right.
It was too difficult to have interviews and get to the right people, and so I just said, you know what, I'm going to go anyway. So I went, and I basically backpacked around Australia for 4 months. I stayed with some family and some people through church that I knew, and I just did odd jobs, worked for some temp agencies. So I'd work long enough to get some money, then travel around. When I was out of money, I'd find another job.
Bit nomadic, just a bit nomadic.
Yeah, so I got it all around Australia, which was cool. And actually debated on not coming back, and kind of thought I'd just stay there for the year and then go back to school when I came back.
Yeah.
But my parents were like, no, you should come back. You can just come live at home again. My dad worked at Conestoga, so I had no money because I worked all summer and spent it all. So they said, come back, we'll help you with tuition, and you can stay at home and just go to school with Dad.
Right.
Through the semester. So I thought, you know what, that's what I'll do. So I came back home, I had nothing. They paid for my tuition for that year, and I stayed at home, and I just went into school with my dad. And then, so that was the end of the second year. Our co-op, I obviously wasn't qualified for co-op anymore because I didn't have the first term. So I was looking for a job in the industry. I actually got hired with the city of Kitchener. So it was my kind of a little peek into municipal work. And I got hired. They were starting a program to detail sidewalk deficiencies. So it was riding a little tricycle, or a big tricycle around town with a GPS computer.
Right.
And every time you come to a crack in the sidewalk or a lift or something, you document it on the GPS.
Right.
So that was what I got hired for. So, which
would have been really fun. I don't know. In my mind, that seems like a pretty fun job.
Yeah, you're outside all summer, you're driving around, and it ended up being, there was 2 people they hired for, so you got to do it together. So it was kind of fun. Anyway, so that was my plan. I got hired. This was like 2 months, or about a month and a half before school ended. Then when school ended and I went to start work, they're like, actually, we have a junior inspector position open.
Right.
We want you to take that job, and we'll hire someone else for the other job. So I thought, okay, that's cool. It was actually more suited to what I wanted to do anyway. And so I got thrown into a junior inspector position. I worked with Capital Paving all summer. They were doing a big contract for the city of Kitchener. And I just followed them around. They were doing road reconstruction and curbs and sidewalks and a lot of asphalt. And I just spent the summer with them. We did the Kitchener Market, downtown Kitchener Market. So I got my first experience in the construction and municipalities. I didn't fit in well with the municipalities. I just found it was a lot of stuff I'm not really comfortable doing. You're not there doing the work, you're there kind of overseeing and just writing stuff down and paperwork. And I was like, I don't think it's really for me. But it was a really good insight into...
Yeah, so I kind of want to know that first experience, because you've now transitioned from an educational institution,
Yep.
and your first kick at the can is an inspector, which I think would be not necessarily a junior position, but someone a little more involved with the project. There's a little more responsibilities. How did that feel? You know, you're working on big projects, big numbers.
It was a little overwhelming. I'm being a kid with a lot of older siblings and a big family and an active church life. I'm very comfortable with people and situations, so I'm pretty able to like kind of analyze the situation, and depending on who the personality is, I can kind of manage that. So I was thrown into this job with the project manager for Capital, who was like, you know, probably mid-50s, been doing this for 30 years. He looks at me like, oh, this is going to be great. I'm going to eat this kid up. So he, you know, because I was responsible every day with writing up a sheet that documented what they did and how they got paid. And so he was always trying to work me to get some extra, quantities here and there. And so we worked, and he was always like, you need to come over to the contracting side. You need to see it from my eyes. And I'm like, no, I'm looking at it from the city's eyes, and I'm trying to. So it was some really interesting back and forth. And there's days where I'm like, I have no idea what I'm doing, but just watch and learn. And I think that's my biggest thing. My biggest takeaway for construction is, if I look back on myself, is there's something for everybody in construction. Doesn't matter what background you have, what gender you are, there's something you can do in construction if you're willing to try some stuff and figure it out.
Well, that's actually my next question. So great leadway into it is, I have this, looking back now, was that journey, that transition, or the first, let's say, 1 to 3 years of your first career, was it difficult? Was it worth it? Like, kind of what did you take away from those first few years? Because from my experiences dealing with younger individuals when we are doing recruitment for a junior role, we get those calls like, it's really hard. I wasn't prepared for this, or school did not give me that skill set I needed to deal with those really tough, real situations, right? It's not a dummy situation in a classroom anymore. This is an invoice that somebody's got to pay, or I made a mistake and now it costs this much. And like you were saying, it's overwhelming, or someone's trying to take advantage of me because they realize I'm barely junior. How difficult was that, and what did you learn out of that difficult journey?
I never really, you're in the moment, you don't really think this is difficult, right?
Right.
At least I didn't. Maybe, that's a little bit unique, or maybe not everyone feels that way. I looked at it as a challenge, and you kind of just like, well, this is what I'm given, I'm going to make the best of it. And I had some pretty good support. What I did find, and what I would advise a young person is just be, don't think it has to be this way for you to succeed. You can succeed down a lot of different paths. So for instance, City of Kitchener was good. So it was really my first work experience in the industry. My next work experience was to start my career in construction, which was after I graduated. And I started at Lafarge, which was a great job. There was a young lady that got hired at the same time as me. We went through school together, and we both got hired for a junior estimator position at Lafarge, which was a a paving and construction office out of Kitchener. So, great, we're really excited. It was like 2 months before. It was a really good job. And for me, I was also getting married, and I was debating on whether to go to Oklahoma, because that's where my wife was from.
Oh, wow.
So I had a job offer down there at a consulting firm, and I had to decide, are we going to go down there, or am I going to stay up here and she's going to come up here? And so getting the job offer from Lafarge was like kind of like a no-brainer, because it was a good job, good company, and kind of what I wanted to do. So we got hired as a junior estimator. So that was like, there was about a month and a half of school left. So finished school, started with Lafarge. Basically the first day we started, so at the office there was a general manager, a chief estimator, and then a bunch of the operations staff. So we were coming in to report to the chief estimator, who was an older fella. He probably, the plan was to, work for another 10 years or whatever, and he'd train us up, and then he could do other things. He put his notice in.
Oh no, on your first day?
Basically, yeah, it was like the first or second day.
Oh.
So we come in, we're like supposed to be learning from this guy, and he's put his notice in. He's given them 2 weeks.
Right.
And so we went from junior estimators to the estimators, and didn't have any clue what we were doing. And then it was kind of a circus at Lafarge. Like, in my 3.5 years there, I had probably 5 bosses. Like, it was just a circus. They just
maybe it was
moving
just the
people in and
time.
out.
Yeah, maybe it was just time
and then right after I left, they ended up selling to Coco. So what it taught me is just to be very versatile, take the challenges as they are, and do your best. And things happen, and you got to sort it out. Like a couple months in, I got my first job, which was a $2 million miscellaneous reconstruction job. Made a couple mistakes on it. The company didn't do very well, but you just learn from it, and you make the best of it.
Exactly. That's what are these challenges on the journey, and not having a mentor or a supervisor your first day of work at a position that you just tried on. That's a pretty good challenge for you, right? And you're going to make mistakes, and I think that's okay, as long as you're able to learn from those mistakes, right? And that's what I think builds people into the next step of their career or the next promotion that they make. Did that estimating, I would say, hotspot you were in, did that have an impact on your accelerated career because of where you are today?
Probably, yeah. And we kind of actually use that same mentality here at Navacon when we're bringing someone young and green in. We're not going to just, spoon feed them.
Right.
We kind of throw them in, we have limited expectations necessarily of what we expect out of them in the first little bit, but we're going to throw a lot of stuff at them to see what they can do. And because I think that's where you find people that can really excel, is you throw it at them and you just see what happens when all that stuff gets thrown at them. How are they going to deal with it? So for me, I learned how to deal with it. I learned, and I'm kind of a person where I don't like doing things that I don't believe are important.
Mm-hmm.
So, and I struggled a little bit with this at a corporate company where there's a lot of stuff that's just corporate stuff.
Right.
It's Lafarge, right? This is the way we do things. And so I struggled there a little bit just because of that. I was like, I don't necessarily believe in this. I don't think it's important, but I'm being forced to do it.
Right. So you're more optimization, efficiency, get the work out the door.
Focus on what, so if it's estimating, I just want to, bid jobs and get work and focus on that. So that kind of, it pushed me away from the corporate environment, and I moved, and hence I'm at a small little company where, we basically choose what's important and then just focus on that and all that other stuff.
That's a great model.
Yeah,
that's a great model.
And we have a lot of guys here that's what they want to do.
Right.
If they're in construction to be a supervisor, they want to be out running jobs and doing what they do well, and us, giving them the support so that they can do that, And all the other stuff that has to be done but may not be their core, we either get other people to do it that's their core, or we don't do it because it's not important.
Right.
So being thrown in the fire like that, I think allowed me to understand estimating really quickly and realize I liked it. And not having that chief estimator there, I got to bid everything. Like there was no jobs where he said, this is, you just worry about these little ones. It was everything. Like we had to bid everything to keep that office going. And so you in 2-3 years, you felt like an experienced estimator because you'd seen it all. You had the failures. In estimating, if you get 1 out of 10, that's a good ratio.
Right.
So you're used to failing. You're used to missing jobs by a little bit. You're used to going, oh no, what did I miss when I get a job and I left all this money on the table to the second bidder? Like, you go through all those processes. So in 3 years, I was a fairly experienced estimator just because I had to be.
Well, and it's interesting that you were talking about some of the green people that you guys hire onto Navacon, because I know when we did the Navacon micro page, so NextGen does this micro page for individuals who are onboarding with our company, and we want to showcase some of the talent that you already have. Yeah. That was actually a common positive comment that your employees had about Navacon was, we're not pigeonholed. We get to try new things. We get the support. We can fail. We're not worried about it, but we get to try so many different hats and see what fits and see what sticks. And that was actually, I think, like 2 or 3 of your individuals had mentioned that, and I thought that was a really interesting way of training people. And I think there's another company in heavy civil as well where that's actually part of their corporate value system is they hire someone in as, let's say, a site engineer or a field engineer, and then they move them into a PC role, which is usually a natural progression. But then, let's go into estimating. Well, from estimating, let's put you into a site super role. And I think in your first 2 or 3 years of working for this company, you've actually touched 3-4 different hats. And that model is starting to pick up with some larger corporations because instead of this is the box fit, this is the organization with multiple boxes. Right. Now where do you fit? Because we know you have some sort of skill set. So where does it fit in? And I think that's maybe a better, it's obviously working. It's obviously working for you guys. So I think that's great. That kind of bleeds into, this next question of, for individuals, for young individuals who are thinking of construction as a career, you talked about that as well. There's so many different pathways. Can you talk about the different pathways in maybe heavy civil, which is your area of expertise? Yeah,
absolutely. So, if you had talked to me when I was in high school that I would basically go down the estimating route and project management route, which is generally an office type, I would have laughed at you because that wasn't how I grew up. I grew up with a very physical upbringing out on the farm, throwing bales around, dealing with cows. It was very physical, hands-on, getting dirty. So I would have probably picked for myself that's the route I would take. I would go through the field, be in the trenches, but it didn't work out that way. Probably because I went to school and the estimating role came and that's just what happened. So, I would say really there's 2 main routes to starting in construction. One is going to be a very, a physically hands-on job, which, is for some people, it's not for others. So if you like hard work, you like the physical nature of the job, you can, basically start anywhere. I mean, for us, you're probably going to start doing flagging or, supporting the guys in some way. But you can start there, and then really it's about experience and hard work. So if you have a good work ethic, you show up every day, a good attitude, and you're willing to absorb things, you're going to work your way up.
Right.
And a lot of our guys, that's what, that's Glenn, for instance, he started at, I think, 16 or 17, in the trenches. And he just worked his way up, and he showed that he was responsible, and he could learn, and worked his way into a foreman role. And so there's ways to do that. Or you can go through the office project coordinator way. For instance, one of our co-op students, he started and I brought him into the office. The first year, he was basically the cost control guy because we didn't have really good cost control. So I said, Brad, you're going to develop a spreadsheet, and I want you to go out to all the jobs, and you're going to tell me what they're spending each day, and then we're going to bring it back to the office, compare it to the estimate, and say, okay, are they making money every day? So he spent his first summer, he had spreadsheets all the way around here, and green, like he printed. I was like, Brad, you're spending too much money on ink. But they'd be all green or all red, depending on whether the job was going well. So now, he actually is probably more in line to a field job. He likes being out with the guys.
Right.
Whether he becomes a foreman or he continues down the road of coordination in the supervisor role, whatever it is, he's in his brain, he has cost control. So he has some of the office, but he can take that into the field.
Right.
And we're like, well, if you want to be in the office, great, we'll find something for you. But if you want to go in the field, we'll do that too. So what I like about construction is there's so many avenues you can go. And really, it's up to you. Like, you can start here and try that, or you can, and typically within our company, you can do all those roles within our company. And we'll find, maybe it's going out and getting some different contracts because now we have these key people.
Right.
And you have that flexibility because you're not just doing one thing or manufacturing one thing. You're basically doing contracts, which, we found we like going in and finding the contracts that maybe a lot of the other companies don't want to do because they don't have those dynamic people. So then we can go in, do these challenging jobs, learn from them. Our people are interested because they're challenging. They're not just doing the same thing all the time. And there's better margins in it, and it keeps things interesting. So I would just say for someone thinking construction or even not even knowing, try it because you don't even know where you could go.
Well, and I think that's a really interesting point. Like, to the very beginning of your story, you didn't even consider construction as a career.
Yeah.
And you went on a very organic journey, I would think, because you weren't necessarily, at the end, your end goal in mind wasn't, I'm going to be working for Navacon, I'm going to be in this position.
Mm-hmm.
It was just as the jobs came up, as your different positions came up, you're pivoting each way along the way, which is the freedom that you actually have within construction, because there are so many different facets. And it's really interesting because I went to Niagara College, and we talked to the mechanical and electrical department for their students, and there was 60 something students. Yeah. And who here wants to be a project manager? And everyone puts up their hands. And I'm like, that's incredible, amazing. A project manager of what? Right? Yeah. Like, I don't think they're, maybe we're not doing the best in describing or giving awareness to, like, you could be a owner side PM, right? Like, working for a municipality is owner side. You could be, and that's a very different job than a GC, which is a very different job than a sub-trade, or working for a manufacturer, a distributor, or a supplier. You could be in sales and be in construction and do a really good living off of that. You could be on the trade side and your job ends at 5 o'clock and you go home and you don't have weekend work, right? Like, there's just all these different avenues, but to your point, you don't have to have it in direction. And talking to these electrical and mechanical students, some of them would ask me and say, well, I didn't get this course, or I started my career in school when I was 30, not when I was 21. And I'm like, so, there's just so much room for everybody to be part of this community. It's just give it a try, see where you fit in.
Yeah, and I can count on my hand, quite a few people just in my brief experience of, people that have had to change careers for some reason, and they got in construction and they love it.
Right.
And even though they're starting, 10 years later, it doesn't take them long to catch up because there's just a huge need for good people. So yeah, I graduated the same time as a couple mature students, and we're still kind of keep tabs on each other in the industry, and they're doing great, and they were starting 10 years later into their career.
Right.
For different reasons. So there's lots of opportunity there too for someone that says, you know what, whatever career I have, or one guy was an injury. He was a welder, and he was having problems with his nerves, so he couldn't weld anymore. So he came in, and now he's a successful supervisor. So
There's a job that's going to use
there's lots of
your
opportunities.
transferable skills, and we need them. Like you said, we need them in this industry. So I'm going to finish this off with what advice do you have to anyone who's either considering or starting their career in construction? And it could be women, it could be second careers like you mentioned, it could be youth, just anyone in general.
Yeah, so we need young people in our industry. I'm sure a lot of industries are saying that, but we really do. You go to any construction company in the area around, you're going to find a lot of older guys, specifically on the field side, actually doing the work, that are, they could retire in 5-10 years, and there's not a lot of people to follow them through. So I would say a couple things. Construction is a dynamic industry. You have to be ready for that. I've hired a number of kind of all different demographics. I've hired a number of girls that have started in, and some of them have succeeded greatly and some of them haven't. And really, I think if you boil the difference down, it's people that are committed, and it is, I would say it's a little fast paced. You have to be ready.
Oh, construction is fast paced, yes.
Yeah, and there's a lot of challenges in schedules and weather, and a lot of time when we go out and start a project, as soon as you dig, you find out that it's not what you expected. So you have to be willing to be dynamic. But if you are, and there's so many opportunities, so many different things you can do, and very good living. Like, even someone says, you know what, I just want to run a piece of heavy equipment. Part of me sometimes says, that's not a bad option.
Yeah.
Like, you're gonna have work. Everyone needs good equipment operators. It's just like a trade. You typically can go home every night to your family, not have to worry about the stress of different leadership positions, and you can earn a good living,
right?
Like a really good living, and you have these skills that you can take, anywhere. You can be running a machine in Cambridge, and maybe for some reason you have to move out west. Well, you can take that skill with you and find a job in construction out there easily. So yeah, I would just encourage, if you have any inclination to join the industry, is just come on. But it's going to come down to a couple things. Is that you got to be willing to be dynamic and to learn from the environment, and to be ready to go. And if you are, then there will be opportunities for you.
Fantastic.
From wherever you're coming from, really.
Well, great. So thank you, John. I really appreciate you taking the time to tell us about your story. As I mentioned, we've known each other for some time, so I've been trying to get this out there for a bit. And thank you for sharing, some advice and some tips to young people, because we are encouraging young people to get into this industry. As you mentioned, there's just so much room for them to grow here. So that's the last of our segment here, and thank you again, John, for joining us. This is John Abel from Navacon, and hope to see you guys soon.